Welcome to the Revenue Room podcast, where we explore strategies and insights from CEOs and revenue critical C-suite executives who are leading businesses in the information and data economy. Today on the Revenue Room, we welcome Amanda Landsaw, Chief Marketing Officer at EndeavorB2B, a leading B2B marketing and intelligence platform serving over 12 million professionals across critical industries. Amanda brings over 15 years of experience transforming audience development into strategic revenue generation. Since joining what was then Endeavor Business Media in 2019, she has helped lead the company's evolution from traditional media publisher to a comprehensive B2B intelligence organization. Under her leadership, EndeavorB2B recently completed a major rebrand and pioneered new approaches to data-driven marketing that balance innovation with privacy protection. As a certified information privacy manager and recognized thought leader in audience engagement, Amanda has become a trusted voice on navigating the intersection of marketing technology, data ethics, and revenue growth. Amanda serves on multiple advisory boards, including Revenue Room CXO, and frequently shares insights on building what she calls audience teams of the future. Today, we'll explore how B2B organizations can move beyond traditional media models, why sales and marketing alignment remains critical for growth, and what it really takes to transform a 100-year publishing legacy into a modern intelligence platform. We'll also discuss the changing role of marketing leaders in an AI-powered world and how companies can build authentic engagement while respecting user privacy. Amanda, welcome to the Revenue Room.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather.
So delighted to have you here, also as one of our newest executive advisory boards for Revenue Room CXO. So again, welcome. But Amanda, EndeavorB2B recently underwent a significant rebrand from Endeavor Business Media. And by the way, I love the name, just flows perfectly. But this wasn't just a name change. Can you walk us through the strategic thinking behind the rationale for this and what it means for EndeavorB2B as a company and your market position?
Yes, for sure. So Endeavor has grown rapidly over the years through mainly acquisition, right? And with that, it was acquiring a lot of media companies. And so bringing all that together under, Endeavor Business Media, as we have evolved as an organization as well, so have our services and our capabilities. And so really the strategic mindset behind that shift from Endeavor Business Media to EndeavorB2B was to really highlight to the public, right, to our clients, to our prospects, to our audiences, that we're more than just a media company. People hear, Endeavor Business Media, they automatically think of media and they kind of put you in that pocket, whenever we're really so much more than that. And our teams are, very much experienced beyond just media. But with all that being said, media is still at the foundation of what we do day in and day out, right? It is our trusted media brands that really bring the audiences to us every single day, but through innovation, product development, privacy first approaches in what we do day in and day out, it has really evolved the organization to be more than just that media piece to it. And so that was really the purpose of going to market as EndeavorB2B, was to highlight just the broader capabilities that we have as a marketing solutions, intelligence, and data organization, so that people know that when they come to us, they're getting a full strategic partner, not just a media partner.
Okay, great. And we'll get into some specific examples of that swath of solutions that you just described, because that's very important. And one of the things I always say when you look at media is media is like the glue in a way. It's right, but all the things that come out from that have tremendous value. But you need the media part in order for all the other things to work.
Well, that's what's bringing in the audience every day, right? They're coming in to read the content and they know who you are and they trust who you are. And that gives you that active, engaged audience versus a flyby audience member who's probably not going to engage as much. And that gives you that leg up with your clients.
Right. Kind of a challenge that B2C is facing right now is they fly by night audiences just coming in because of Google search or click, but really no relationship. B2B media on the flip side has really done such a tremendous job building, not only providing content that helps their audience members do their jobs better, faster, with less risk. It helps them grow in their career, so they keep coming back. But there's real value every day, and that's to me the nirvana you want with your customers, or that they need
Agreed.
you. So now with that, another exciting development is you mentioned when we last spoke that you reorganized your sales teams around enterprise accounts rather than traditional brand-based territories. And this, by the way, is a trend I'm seeing at other companies as well. And and I think EndeavorB2B is so well suited for this because of the adjacencies you have. Not you're selling audience, not just brands, but wow, that is a shift. So one, I'd love to hear um, culturally how that has been, where it's been successful or where you kind of had some challenges, and also educating your customers that you're going to market this way, and then how it's changing the conversation overall.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's really important. So we did this over the summer, and it hasn't not had its hiccups, as everything does with a big, whether it's overarching change, reorganization, or whatever it is. And really, we still have our core sellers, right, that are more brand and market focused. But then we also have enterprise sellers who are focused across the entire organization. And that really does, we have over 15 different verticals across 90 plus brands. And so you almost have to have those different layers within the sales organization so that people are really focused in on those specific markets, because there are clients that are just going to focus on healthcare or manufacturing, right? But then you do have some of those larger strategic clients who are looking more at the audience base versus just specific brands. And we have that capability to really spread across our 12 plus million audience members across all these different verticals and provide that in detail strategic value to our clients. And so that's really the conversation that we're having with clients too, right? Is really you go in, you have that discovery call, you see where that really fits and where their need fits, and then you start divvying things out based off of that. So I do think that's an important piece to all of it. Culturally, it has been pretty well received. Again, it hasn't gone without its hiccups, but that's going to happen with anything.
Yeah.
But it's been really about communication, right? At the end of the day, as long as you're communicating everything effectively, efficiently, it's very similar to the rebrand, right? People are like, oh, well, why are we rebranding? Well, here's the information ahead of that. And really, whenever we came out with the rebrand, that happened after some of these shifts on the selling side. People were like, oh, okay, now this makes a little bit more sense whenever we're really sitting there going forward as Endeavor B2B instead of just kind of these different verticals in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so culturally, it's been well received. And, as we're going to market, it really is focusing on that strategic value that the entire organization can bring, and then trying to fill in any gaps at the market or brand level where needed.
Yeah, and actually, it's quite interesting you brought up because I think there's two ways to look at the enterprise approach. One is, who are the large clients that would buy more than one of our brands, right? And whatever the threshold is. But two, there are companies like SAP and Oracle and Cisco and IBM. I mean, I dealt with all of those when I was in the manufacturing space. And SAP has a manufacturing vertical, they have a retail vertical, they have a utilities, oil and gas. So if you're covering any of those from a brand,
Or all of them.
Right. So even though they're different buying pockets or budgets, and even in some cases, just different decision makers, having, and I don't know if it's only one person, but having a sales squad that is all about SAP or, SAP Oracle, but really understands the business and knows how to go in and land and expand. That's another way to look at enterprise, right? It's that it's, expansion within the logo, but then it's also, let's say it's one buying center that does have like, oh, we do manufacturing and you have oil and gas because they kind of are adjacent, right? Or you've got CPG or you've got retail or automotive. Like that could be, again, someone who could be like, oh, I want to buy all five of that. I want that audience. I want the automotive audience wherever they're going on Endeavor B2B.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important just to be able to have those conversations too, right? Like in media, traditionally, you have been very much ingrained in your brand or your market, and being able to educate yourself as a seller across multiple verticals by obviously using the experts that you have within your organization. We all know we all have our own specific capacities in which we can take in information, right? We can't be an expert across 15 verticals or even, probably 5 to 10. And so it is important to be able, but to at least educate yourself to be able to have those conversations and be that valuable resource and partner for those clients or prospective clients and say, I totally hear what you're saying and see where you're going. We have these opportunities that lie to access these different audiences. And that's where we really have, our sellers and working with our marketers, working with our audience teams, working with our marketing solutions teams, really being able to come in to create a holistic campaign or contract, however, relationship, partnership as we move forward with those clients.
How are you tracking success with this effort? Do you like key KPIs like average contract size going up or lifetime value? What kind of metrics are you using to say this investment, because it's not just the reorg or a realignment,
Right.
it's training, upskilling, developing all of the marketing collateral. That's, there's a lot of investment going into this strategy. How are you measuring success?
There's a few different KPIs, right? So to your point, lifetime value is definitely one of them that we're looking at. Retention rates are another piece to this too, right? So if it's a client that we've already had, how are we looking at that from a retention perspective? And then that upsell opportunity. And then, bringing in net new logos. Obviously you have like your core accounts, your clients that you do have currently, but then how are you going to market and getting net new logos coming in as well? And so I would say those are some key areas that we're looking at.
It's funny when, just going back to that SAP example, we always had this debate is if we had one of the divisions, right, manufacturing, and then we were able to get retail, for example, which was a totally different buyer, even though it had SAP logo, was that a new logo per se? And my position always was, no, that's expansion, right? That's you're expanding within the logo. But so many people wanted to call it new logo acquisition.
I agree, right? I totally agree. Like it's expansion. You still have that logo, but it is definitely expanding upon that. Because otherwise I feel like it's hard to really bring in like, what is that true value of that? Versus just being able to keep adding things on. It brings in that lifetime value a little bit more, I believe.
Well, one, definitely the lifetime value. And two, I think from a company valuation standpoint, if I were an investor, I'd like to see like, wow, they've got a really deep relationship with SAP across multiple buying centers, that would tell me that your product is, you've got a great sales team, your product is really well, you're very sticky. But that churning that logo is going to be a lot harder because they'd all have to go. All right. So I love this question because I was in London at an event. Actually, I'm sorry. I was at Madrid. I was in Madrid at an event called FIP. But a lot of European media companies. And they kept saying, like, are you media or are you a publisher? I'm like, what's the difference? But you and I, there is a little difference. And you had a similar experience. Tell me, like, you have to give me your opinion about the word publisher versus media.
Oh man, I feel like publisher is it is an avenue. Like it is one source, right? To me, a publisher is you're printing off a magazine or maybe a website falls into that category, but in my mindset, and this is just strictly my opinion, publisher is more of like a printed product versus media where it covers multiple different formats ultimately, right? You can be you see it like media organizations, news media on TV, websites, right? They might have a printed physical piece to it, but to me now publishing has really taken that more of a tangible piece to it that you're printing out, distributing, however that may be, right? Whereas media is more broad across multiple formats, especially as more formats over the years have been introduced between, podcasts, and now everybody can do a video on their phone and upload that to any almost platform that they want to. And so that's really where I think that those two delineations is like the broader view of overarching media versus publishing, where it is that printed piece. And media can obviously include publishing, but I don't think publishing includes media. That would be my
No, I think you nailed it. I think that's exactly because also what was interesting about the event in Madrid was just lots of B2C publishers there, but with print, like they still are on the newsstand. So I agree. I think we confuse it a little bit here in the US, though, to be honest.
Agreed. Well, I think that just goes back to where media organizations used to be 10, 15 years ago, even, right? Like a lot has changed really in the last 10 years. But you go 10 to 15 years ago, where you had a lot of these larger organizations where they had in-house print fulfillment, right? Like they actually had those where they're doing a lot of that in-house. And so people kind of, those organizations have transitioned over from not just publishing. So they may have started off as that, but then more into the overarching media where publishing is just a component to it.
No, got it. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and this is another point you and I talked about last time we were on a call, and and it's very interesting, which is technology's role in revenue generation, and actually how AI is changing some of the skill sets we need to be really good sellers. But that on one hand, the tech, the AI, the tools that can help you do like, customer research or competitive analysis, or, even helping you put together decks. There's this tool out there at Gamma that I've been starting to play around with. And literally the decks that come out of it, if you give it a great outline, is amazing. And they just released like 100 prompts. And of those, like 25 are sales related, like make me a killer competitive, kill kit deck for this, and boom. But sellers are still like, whoa, that's a lot of time still. They're not looking at it yet as an asset. It's like yet one more thing. And part of that's our fault, like, and the industry, when you look at how much is out there and how much we've added on and layered on to, I don't care if you're using Salesforce or HubSpot, you've got this lead intelligence, you've got this outdoor SDR platform. Oh, once the deal's closed, yep, we have another platform. What do you feel like? What's your position, and how are you looking at this in terms of, you've already had one big change on the enterprise shift, and then you also have this. How are you looking at it as from an Endeavor B2B strategy?
Yeah, we've taken a very hands-on approach in the fact that we're just trying to get ahead of it with training, right? We really want to make sure that our sellers and the rest of the organization are very well versed in the benefits of where AI can come into play, but also where it doesn't, right? Like people want to go take the latest thing that AI has come out with or any type of AI platform and just shove all, whether it's confidential information, personal information, whatever it may be, into this platform and just kind of do its own thing to see what they can get out of it without really knowing, is this training the model? What does my prompt actually look like? All those types of things. So we've really tried, and we actually just had one of these trainings a couple of weeks ago where trying to really get an idea across the organization of how everybody's utilizing it, right? What tools are they using? We have a list of approved tools at Endeavor that can be utilized for work. But then also it's that time, to your point, the time piece. How often do we want our sellers in there utilizing AI really to practice? It's one thing if they're doing it on their own time, trying to become really well versed in how to prompt effectively and efficiently and have that conversation with AI to get what they need out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're spending inordinate amounts of time in there instead of selling, right? And I'm not saying that they are, but we've all kind of done it, right? But we've sat there and played around with AI to figure out what we should be doing. Now it's a matter of, are you doing that on work time or on your own time? But really trying to get good at prompting to get what you need. And so developing playbooks has been really important to this too, of what has worked for other sellers within the organization. What is our sales enablement team? How are they using it to help really build up the sales team and give them the information that they need as they're going to market as well? And then obviously on the marketing side too, how are we using that? As you can imagine, across 15 different verticals, we have to have content that the sellers can then use as collateral to be able to go to market. So how are we also utilizing AI to help make things a little bit more efficient on the marketing side so that the sellers have what they need that's effective to go out to market with? So I think it's going to become more and more an integral part of everybody's day-to-day lives, even in the selling side, because it can make things go a lot quicker, but you still have to have that human element piece to it. So, it's really a tool to use to enhance what we're doing day in and day out, not replace the actual human component, the human element, the research element behind all of it.
So I was at another event last week. Company called Indigo Trigger has an event called Lead to Cash Bash. It started out as like a social thing for his clients, but it's now, I think he had 300 people there. But one of the sessions, which was my favorite, and I'm actually inviting them to speak on this podcast, was Hearst newspapers. And literally, they have it's basically a new function within the sales enablement and rev ops part of the business, where they built, and it was one of the, the enterprise sales people who was like, you know what, I'm going to start building these agents to help salespeople from onboarding and upskilling to client presentations and objection handling. So literally they've built, and they did it with ChatGPT Enterprise, and Outreach is the layer, it's all built in, and Salesforce. So first part that was intriguing was Salesforce went from being where all the work was done to now being the database, the single source of truth. That's feeding Outreach. Outreach is where the work's now being done, the conversations that are being recorded, where they can access these. I've got this client, I need to know da. But one of the agents they built was cold calling. And so the agent helps new sellers or sellers who are not confident go in by their level. They answer a few questions like, okay, you're a beginner level. We're going to start here. And they can start doing mock cold calls with this agent going back and forth, get scored, then move to the next. And they've actually seen a dramatic change on the positive side from confidence, more connects on these cold calls that move into deal. And like, that's just one example. But my point with this, it's absolutely a new role in the business. You need to have the actual people who know how to do the work do it versus like a data scientist or a technology. They don't know what a salesperson's day in a life is. And there has to be like big commitment to it, because it again, it's not cheap, to do all those things. But anyway, I just had to share that because I thought it was fascinating. It sounds
that is, and I think it's also to that point, because to your point, it's not cheap, right? Where do you really want your people focused in on? Having a champion or two to really spearhead that. Like if you've got because we all know this, you introduce something new and people are just like, well, this is another thing I have to spend my time on instead of spending my time on this that you really want me, the end KPI that you really want me focused in on. And so one of the things that we've started implementing across several different departments, especially under the marketing teams that I lead, is task forces. And it's taking a couple of people who are very, they're basically raising their hand and they're saying, okay, I want to become the quote unquote expert in this, whether that's AI, right? Or whether it's content, or whether that's that audience and editorial collaboration, or, on the marketing side, that marketing and sales alignment piece. They're becoming that expert. And so whenever the rest of the team comes up and they say, well, I have a question around this, or this, they say, well, here's what I've already learned about this, or using monthly meetings or whatever it may be to educate the rest of the team on it, so that they can then go back and say, okay, well, I've already done the heavy lifting for you. Now you can go out and be effective and efficient with it. So I love that idea of having, you have a seller going in there and they're kind of raising their hand and going in and doing it, probably with the help of one or two other, I would imagine, within the organization. And really kind of knocking out all the kinks so it can then get distributed to the broader organization.
I think it was, I'm going to find out, but they had two people on stage. One was the seller who now became this role. This is a new role they've developed, and he's it. And then there was, I think their head of Rev Ops was, they were working together on all of this. But one recommendation I got from that event that is literally build a prompt library that is easily searchable for everybody, and just like, oh, you want to do, here's your prompt. Because this prompt engineering is becoming much more critical and important because of how much data and information and how these are learning how to think. And even just this, even with my podcast scripts and the questions, like, I know you really well. Obviously, we've known each other for a couple of years. I know what your job is, but I am pushing out so much content on the podcast. I now have, I use, I think there's like 5 platforms to get me to where I have the script. I want to make sure I got the richness of the questions. I want to make sure I've got the right introduction. I also know I'm going to be writing at least 2 2 blogs based on this. And I know that we're going to not only do what we call the big drop, which is when we drop the podcast and the full and the blog, but when we do the clips. And so all of that is like that whole ecosystem, with the exception of Riverside, which also has its AI embedded in here, is
Right.
they're all AI tools.
Well,
It's
and
really
how many people
incredible.
would it take you, right? Without the AI tools, how many people would it take you to actually be able to execute things to the level that you want to in that sense?
We probably could pump out two podcasts a month.
Mhm.
And we're doing between 6 and 10, depending on the month. So yeah, it definitely does up the opportunity, the ups the productivity levels.
One thing
So
I will say before we move on though from that, I love the fact too that, to your point, they created a new position based off of that. So the opportunities that are coming out for career development and advancement, if done correctly, right? I think that there's a lot of opportunities there that people just may not know yet, even just by sheer curiosity, right? I'm curious to start looking at this, taking it upon themselves too, and coming into something that's really great that can enhance the broader company and really develop that new career path for them.
that's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, on two levels. One is, and it's going so fast, but like the kids who are just graduating with software development degrees, I mean, I think it was Boston College, 40% of them did not get hired out of school. Secondly, now we were already saying that every functional role needs to have some level of data science capabilities. I'm not saying go out and build a data science model, but you need to be able to interpret data and then understand what that interpretation converts to in terms of action, and then how that action maps back to what the desired outcome was, right? That's like base level. So now on top of that, you have to, I believe, having AI capabilities and skill sets that are proven are it's going to be like a non-negotiable for many companies.
I agree. Yeah, you'll get left behind because organizations will get left behind if they're not also seeing the best way that they can integrate AI into their day to day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think my father, he's 84 now, but honestly, if they hadn't sold the company, we would have had to take him out on a stretcher. But I could just see him like grumbling about this. So because it's that generation got hit by so much change, and you think about it. So that just kind of made me chuckle a little bit. So let's talk about marketing and its evolving role. Because I'll be honest with you in terms of what I'm seeing in marketing, and that is just what we just spoke about. Marketing's role to me has changed dramatically. And you either have caught up or you're not. But a traditional marketer, I think, is going to have a very hard time finding a role, because it's so data driven. There's so much technology. There's so many things, like just even you need to know about data, the privacy. It like you are the guardian of just this not only tremendous asset, but potential tremendous risk.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Marketing's role has changed dramatically. And that's one of the things, like if you've heard me talk in the past, like I kind of hate the term audience development. Because again, going back to that publisher, right? That publisher piece, to me, it's outdated. It is audience development, but it's also audience marketing. Because the reason I really kind of steer more towards audience marketing is, one, as a CMO, right? I've got corporate marketing, customer marketing, audience marketing / development within my groups. And with that, it's becoming all three of those are becoming so data driven that I'm not looking for somebody who can just pump out great creative. Yes, that's a part of it, but what is that creative telling you? Whenever you're getting that out there, what is it actually telling you? What's the return that we're seeing on it? And from the marketing perspective, right? ROI has always been a KPI that we've looked at, but now it's taking to that next step of what decisions and or what actions are going to change based off of those results, and really driving it that way. And it's not about perfection. Like, no, do we want stuff going out with grammatical errors? Absolutely not. But we've got to get stuff out the door quickly. You can't just sit there for months and months and think of a campaign and plan all this stuff out and then, make 5 different iterations, and then it finally goes to market, because we live in such a world now where everything is going very, very fast. If you do that, you're going to get left behind. If you do that, your organization is going to fall behind as well. And so I think it's really important that marketers are well equipped to look at the data, understand the data, and make quick decisions based off of what the data is telling them. But then also, to me, the true test to that is, okay, now your CMO or your CEO or your board is asking you what that information means. What are you telling them? Right? It's we can't have professional marketers at every level of the organization and across the entire organization, but you need to be able to relay that information to them and not just say, well, it got a 50% open rate. And right, like, what does that really mean?
Right.
And so I do think that the role of marketing is changing a lot. And then whenever you start looking at, because on the audience side, right, you really have to break out of this silo where people are looking to you as the expert, as the partner. You're no longer just kind of this shared service. You're an integrated partner into that market, into that brand. That those audiences inside and out, and you're working with sales and editorial to be able to make sure that audience strategy comes full circle. On the corporate and customer marketing side, right, you're working hand in hand with sales and sales enablement to ensure that you've got the right ICPs in place, that sales is aware of what those actions that are being taken are happening, and how we keep moving that needle forward to get people into the pipeline and building that out on a regular basis, but also helping on the retention side of things. And so I think marketing has become more integral and ingrained in the overarching process, because there is so much data that's back behind it. And the marketers that are going to succeed are those that can think outside of the box. They're creative. They're also data driven. And it's not just about, let's just send everything to everybody, because shifting a little bit to privacy, right? Even if it's not the regulators that are coming out with stuff, you've got Google, you've got Apple, you've got Yahoo, you got all these email providers that are taking matters into their own hands and saying, well, hey, you know what? You guys are sending 50 emails out in a day. Nobody's engaging with it. So I'm going to downgrade you in the inbox placement. And so it's not just regulators. It's big tech also taking matters into their own hand. And you, as an organization that sends a lot of emails, right? We all do it. We have to make sure that we are following best practices and doing everything that we can to reach the right people, because otherwise you're just going to get filtered out with all the noise.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and I agree. So you have the regulators, you have the big email service providers. You actually then also have the companies. You could easily get blocked at a company level if they think you're emailing their staff too much. And then you have the individual who just says, so you've got to manage that whole ecosystem in terms of the personalization, right time, right format. But this leads just so perfectly to the next question. I have always been a huge proponent that marketing, I always call revenue critical C-suite roles or revenue critical roles. Well, guess what? Marketing falls into revenue critical. Why? Because without marketing, we have no revenue, our revenue gets severely impeded. One is, how is marketing's contribution to revenue evolving at EndeavorB2B? Like, in terms of incentives or, OKRs or KPIs, the direct impact of marketing on revenue. And then the other area, once we talk about, I do want to dive into, is how do you calculate lifetime value of an audience member?
Oh, that one. Okay, so starting with the first one, it has shifted a lot. So I have been in the CMO role for right at a year, right? Prior to this, I was the VP of Audience Development, really seeing that side of things, leading the charge on that when it comes to all things audience at Endeavor. And so we really historically have not had a CMO. And so throughout the last year, the focus has really been on that sales and marketing alignment. Where have those gaps been? Where are those opportunities? But then also, how are we now helping build out pipeline even more so to bring in net new logos, right? And so that's been a really big focus, is trying to build out net new logos. Historically, we started a kind of a corporate marketing team back earlier in the year. And so that's where our focus has been: thought leadership, demand gen, pipeline building, retention. Historically, we've had a lot of focus on retention, client retention within our customer, like within the brands themselves. As you can imagine, across 90 plus brands and 15 different verticals, you have to have a fairly large marketing team, but it's not like we're going out there with 50 soldiers on the ground. And so it is trying to make things the most efficient and effective, that we can make them. And so we really started shifting that focus this year on just pipeline development and net new logos and bringing that in. And I would say we're getting to a really good point with that, where we're looking at marketing revenue attribution, right? We're seeing how many touches is it taking really to turn somebody into, even just from a lead to MQL to SQL and beyond, really identifying what is an MQL and SQL. Client is what it is, right? But I do think that there are some very organizational specific MQL and SQL definitions that we have to define, and we have defined over this past year. And so it's not a one size fits all approach for every company, but making sure that at the base level, marketing, sales, leadership is all aware of what that looks like, so that we can then build the pipeline forward and build out what those strategies look like. So I'd say that's really where the key focus has been with KPIs and such, is going to be marketing attribution, bringing in new leads, MQL to SQL, SQL to clients. And with that, right, is just making sure we have the correct and best marketing tech stack in place as well. So that's been another area of focus that we've been honing in on.
All right. And just for our listeners, because this is where the media and data information industry gets a little confusing, is we actually have two different customer segments. So marketing, so Amanda's role, your role is literally, on one hand, it's your audience development and engagement, right? And then you have on the other side, which I typically term sales marketing, although I don't really like that, but it's the only way I can figure out how to differentiate between audience marketing and engagement versus the sales marketing and engagement, is then there's all of the leads that need to be generated for the sales teams to effectively sell advertising and sponsorships and, audience engagement programs. So that's actually, I talk to a lot of clients, Amanda, who don't have marketing for their sales teams still. It's a real big hunter role, or what I call hugely reliant on retention with very little new business activity. So that's really good to hear. Now, on the audience side, that one I always know is a loaded question, is what is then, it's much easier to calculate lifetime value of an advertiser or a sponsor, right? It's just there's your contract, blah, 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 blah. On the audience side, this has always been the big conundrum, especially if you don't have a paid subscription model.
Right, which we don't, right? We have maybe maybe two brands that we could look at it as a paid, truly paid, but it's not, even then it's not all. But yes, it's absolutely a conundrum that I brought this up actually on another advisory board about a month or so ago. And I was just like, how's everybody calculating audience lifetime value? And they were just like, ugh. Because there were some big names in that room, right? And it's because it is such a complex thing. And so at Endeavor, we have a formula in place that we have basically looked at it from an audience and revenue perspective. Where we ultimately want to get with it, right, is looking at it by product. But when you have 100, 200 products, right, it starts getting a little bit more complicated and how that you can actually look at that stuff. So it is an interesting piece, but we do look at it more from, strictly audience and revenue, but we also have some other parameters in place, because we're not just, everybody knows you have a big database, right? You've got your database of audiences, and that could be built out because people actually opted into things. That could be because you went to a third-party database and output a bunch of names and just loaded them into your database. We don't do that. But that's how people look at building out their databases. And so we also add additional parameters to just that formula, where we do look at total audience and revenue, but we also look at our engaged audience and revenue, and really make sure that we have a solid look at both of those pieces, because at the end of the day, that engaged audience is who is going to bring the most value in.
Yeah, I had a conversation with another guest I had on here last week, and we were talking about, if you, for example, have like a matchmaking and meeting program, like the meetings are actually that they agree to has a value because you're delivering that to the sponsor, right? Without that meeting, the sponsor value isn't there. So it's
Mhm.
like, what is the engagement that connects directly to the other side of the fence is one way. The problem is with that is there's a life cycle, right? I always forget this term. It's like there's a half-life, right? It just
Mhm.
there's a period of time where then you have to have a calculation like, okay, this person's a year old and maybe they did a meeting back in, 6 months ago, but that no longer is valuable. It's
Right.
over, right? So that's where I think a lot of the complication comes in. But it's good that you actually have a strategy and that you're thinking about it. And I think the more audience, and I also don't like to use this word, but for the lack of a better one, but the more you own your audience or the
Mhm.
more they're engaged with you due to what's happening with search and, AI generated results and things like that, that also has now, I think, increased value.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think that's a big piece to that too, because you're not just, we're not just going out there and scraping a bunch of data off of websites and calling them our audience, right? Like these people, they are coming in, they're engaging with us, they're engaging with our websites. And it's really looking at what does engagement, like, again, another organizational dependent thing. What does engagement really mean to you? And so having those clear parameters of is engagement just an open or a click? Okay, well, how are you accounting for bots? Right? Like that's something we haven't even talked about with all the complexities of this is now you're putting in bot traffic on both the website and emails. And how is that impacting what you're doing day in and day out? But then it's, what is as an organization, what does your engagement definition really look like? Is everybody behind that?
Hmm.
And how does that play into the larger picture of, lifetime value to your point? If one client gets the same lead 15 times, how valuable is
Yeah,
that for
that's
them?
not
So
that
then
right.
there's that. Right. So then it's bringing in new audiences, especially as you're looking at audience churn. And we always have these conversations during budgeting season. Okay, you want to grow your audience by 5%, but you actually lost 2% just due to unsubscribes and all that. So actually, you need to account for growing your audience by
Yeah.
7%. And I think it's really looking at that holistic audience view. And as an organization, having that same terminology and everybody thinking that having that same mindset. And it's taken us some time to get there, but we've moved in a really good direction with all of that. As you can imagine, with various acquisitions, people thought different things. And so I've been very fortunate to be able to have the support at the leadership side of things to be able to actually have those conversations and working with great teams to get everybody thinking the same way.
Well, I think we just came up with a new acronym. Before, we have net revenue retention. Now we have net audience retention.
Yes.
So, which I think is actually a really critical KPI to look, right? Because you're definitely going to lose, but you have to gain. And then
Hmm.
so I want to dive into the privacy side quickly, and then I think we're going to almost be out of time. But you're a certified privacy professional, and really trying to manage and maintain solid privacy practices, but while also meeting those growth goals, meeting the revenue goals. Like, how do you balance that?
It is a team effort. So we have, our chief administrative and legal officer here at Endeavor. She's the one that spearheads. She's an attorney. So she spearheads all of the legalese of everything privacy. And then you've got a couple of us who are more of that boots on the ground that are helping with the operational side of things. But I would say, I mean, one, it is having that regular communication. We are in, constant communication about what laws are coming out, what could be passed, what couldn't, everything that's happening kind of even with the GDPR and some of the potential changes that are happening over there as it relates to AI and cookies and consent. But we've really looked at privacy at Endeavor. One, we've taken it very, very seriously. And so we feel like that's a competitive advantage. And I've always said, if you're actually doing what you need to be doing and what's in the best interest of your clients, your prospective clients, your audiences, your employees, it's actually going to allow broader use, like enable broader use of the data versus restricting you, because you're taking all the right steps. The other thing too is, across the entire organization, we've really educated people on privacy by design. So implementing privacy as the default measure. So whether it is, sales collateral, audience marketing, product innovation, whatever it may be, what is, really, as you're thinking through that process, where are the privacy pieces that need to come into play? So we're not going through an entire process and then saying, okay, we're about ready to launch. Where does privacy fit into this? It's actually the reverse. Here's the idea. Where does privacy fit into this process? Okay, now let's develop it from there. And that really helps keep things in check throughout the entire process and not waste a bunch of time and money because you got to the end and really you're just like, oh, actually, we're just adding everybody to the database, no matter what they did. No, we can't do that, right? And so it's really thinking about that from the get-go. And so, we have several trainings in place throughout the year as an entire company. Lunch and Learns, we celebrate Data Privacy Day in January, and we do a formal training around that. We try to make it fun. We try to make it engaging. But it is something that we've really built into the foundation of what we do day in and day out, so that people are thinking of privacy as the default and not as an after fact.
So I love so privacy as a default, privacy by design, Data Privacy Day, lots of training. So the whole company is with the program, right? They're on the train, the privacy train. That's really well thought out. Very well thought out.
I would say, like, on our privacy team, we have a lot of people who are really passionate about it. I know it's a very odd thing to be a little bit passionate about, right? Especially as like a marketer, it's just something that I really enjoy doing as well. And so, and we've been doing it as a team since really Endeavor's inception. I've been on our privacy team since 2019, whenever I joined. And so we've got a lot of really great, passionate people. And that's really helps us drive our AI strategy, right? Drive our consent strategy, drive our product strategy. And we can do that with confidence as we move forward because we have those foundations in place.
All right. I've got one last question. This is it's a broader one for you, but looking ahead to, let's say 3 years from now, what's the biggest opportunity for B2B organizations to accelerate revenue growth? Like what do you see as the shift?
I think there's going to be a lot around product refinement and product expansion, right? We've got a lot that's just changing in the industry as a whole, and within just services, right? Whether it's marketing services, whether it's media services, whether it's intelligence, whatever it is, there's a lot of opportunities there. And so I think instead of doing like a whack-a-mole, it's going to be more of people refining their products that they have to offer, getting really, really good at that because you can't just keep products as is. They're going to have to evolve. So with the evolution of some of your products, really getting down to what works best, what's most efficient, and then trying to build additional products based off of those new things and making them agile. So I think those are going to be really where the focus is going to be, is just product development, product refinement, and then people being able to pivot and move quickly as needed.
Do you see, with all of the data you're sitting on, do you envision that EndeavorB2B will have actually like what I call a standalone data solution that customers could buy from you?
TBD. Those are some of the things that, we have a variety of different things on our roadmap that we're talking through, evaluating and looking at. There's a lot that's on the horizon. And I think right now there's really nothing that's off of the table, as long as it aligns with our overarching corporate strategy and the direction we're moving.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So we'll just end with a few rapid fire questions here. Coffee or tea?
Coffee in the morning, tea at night.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
I'm savory. And the best business book you've read this year?
I always go back to the same one. So I try to read Deep Work by Cal Newport every year. I really love that book. We live in a world of just utter distraction, especially in, whether it's home or professional life, especially with so many people working remotely. I work remotely, right? And so the point of the book is really making sure you're setting that specific time down for deep work, and the difference between deep work versus shallow work, right?
Mhm.
And just making sure that you have that space, whether it's, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in front of your computer. Maybe you're going for a walk and that's where you're doing some of your deep work, but you're really focusing on that. And the other reason I really like that book is because it also kind of comes back to, I'm about to be a mom of 3. And so it comes also back down to mindful meditation, being in the present moment, kind of really focusing in on where you're at that point in time. And so that deep work piece, it gives a lot of really great strategies on how to implement it. And sometimes you read it and you're just like, there's no way I could get away for a week and to a cabin with no electricity and no running water and just sit there and try and do deep work. But it does give you some practical strategies to actually implement your day to day.
All right, and I forgot to ask you my what I typically open up with a fun question, which is what is the most surprising career position you've had in your lifetime?
Yes, so I am not a very tall person. I am barely 5'2" on a good day with flats on. And about a decade ago, I worked as the director of marketing for the WNBA. We had a team here in Tulsa, the Tulsa Shock, and I was regularly on TV with 6'7", 6'8" players. And so that was always a fun one. It was definitely a different time in my marketing career, but it was a lot of fun being around just that sports environment. And then I think everybody had a good time with my height. So
you shared a great photo, which we'll include in one of our blogs. It's not only is it adorable, but it's just fun, really fun. It's been an incredible conversation, Amanda. So thank you so much for joining us. For our listeners who want to learn more about EndeavorB2B's transformation or connect with Amanda directly, we will include Amanda's LinkedIn in our show notes. And just so you know, this conversation doesn't end with this podcast. It continues inside our professional network called Revenue Room CXO, which is the only network where CEOs and their revenue critical teams turn AI disruption into growth strategy. And we have an upcoming event called Revved Up 2026, which will take place March 23rd through the 24th at the Vinoy in St. Pete, Florida, where the future of data, AI, and revenue leadership takes the main stage. Links to both those will also be in the show notes. So again, thank you for joining us today, Amanda. And to our listeners, if you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with other revenue leaders in your network. We'll see you next time on the Revenue Room.